what is really cool, it actually was sparking some controversy the other day on Twitter, is North Carolina recently passed a bill. I think it was passed or might have been proposed, and maybe not passed yet, but it was, if any kid is in school and starts like showing signs of like switching their name, for example, or going by a different gender, whatever it is, that the parent has to be notified. And a lot of people were like, this is so dangerous. We can't have this, North Carolina is so backwards, and kind of an uproar. And I was thinking, how is anything but that acceptable? Because if I'm trusting you to watch my child for that many hours a day, 5 days a week, I think that I have a right to know if anything like that is happening, because then I have to be able to have that conversation at home. Like, I shouldn't be left in the dark as the parent as to if they're trying to, identify as anything else, because obviously whether they actually have gender dysphoria or maybe it's something else happening, I can't give them the proper care if I don't know what's going on. So it was kind of alarming to me that we were saying the parents didn't have a right to that information, or that was like the backlash. Obviously North Carolina disagrees with that. I don't know if you saw that happening. I think it was like last week, maybe.
Yeah, it's wild how the tendency to sort of wanting to distance you from your parents, and how everything is sort of underground. And there's a lot of internet forums where people will tell you, like, what to tell your parents in order to get puberty blockers, and here's what you have to do.
Oh,
like, say
wow.
You're going to kill yourself. I mean, there's all these bizarre communities and the ways that they just sort of try to vilify and distance you from those around you. I mean, it's quite cultish in a very literal sense. And you'll note in some of the articles for the When Sons Become Daughters, this was like a very similar thing that happened. You'd have the boys that would go to their school, and the parents were unaware that they are being called the opposite sex. They have a new name. And, to some degree, people might not think it's all that concerning, but when you realize what lies further down that path, if they're just confused about their gender because they're gender nonconforming, and they're a tomboy or whatever, an effeminate male, they shouldn't be then put down this path where puberty blockers lie, or cross-sex hormones, which are going to result in permanent lifelong sterility, and surgeries that are irreversible. And if you're a young girl and you're taking testosterone, these are irreversible things. Your voice will change permanently. If you're on it long enough, you'll have to get a hysterectomy, because your reproductive organs just sort of start to deteriorate on the inside, and you're going to get facial hair growth. I mean, these are things that are completely irreversible, and the path starts with the sort of social affirming process, where you just accept them as they say they are. And you can't investigate any sort of underlying causes to their dysphoria, because that's considered conversion therapy in some places. I know in Canada I think that's currently the case.
It's a bunch of states here too, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it might be a state by state thing, but it's like everything is just pushing them in one direction, and that direction is your trans, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormone surgery. It's a really dangerous slippery slope that, is usually a fallacy, but in this case, you do see this thousands % uptick in the number of kids that are presenting to clinics, following a whole different sort of trajectory that we'd see with normal kids claiming to be trans, which usually starts at a very, very young age, and it's persistent and consistent. We're getting kids that are just in their social groups having no previous history of gender nonconformity or anything, just suddenly claiming that they're the opposite sex, and then they're just all in, and they want the cross-sex hormones and everything. So yeah, it's a interesting phenomenon, and the last thing we should be doing is just barreling ahead, without proper safety checks to make sure that the kids are getting the care that they actually deserve.
For sure, because as a responsible, loving parent, you're going to want to make sure that your kid feels comfortable in their body, and I guess like talk these things out, not just accept it as face value. I mean, I know it's not like a great side-by-side comparison, but a lot of girls go through or maybe even have like body dysmorphia, right? Like, and I'm sure it's probably gone up since social media. So there was a time in my life where, I mean, I had an eating disorder. I was like very unhappy with how I looked. I couldn't be thin enough. And I was like working out in excess. So to just say simply because I was uncomfortable with my body that I had to make like a physical, like an external change, I think is a little bit short-sighted when you compare the two. And it's not to take away like that some people are actually trans. Like we know that that exists. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the, like you said, the uptick that we're seeing, like the social contagion that's kind of happening. So like for me, the proper parenting would have been to figure out what was going on with me, what my anxiety or my discomfort, and fix that internally, not externally. Like, again, I could have worked out until I withered away to nothing. That's not the solution. So it's being able to, I guess, be comfortable in your body. And that starts with a conversation. It's not necessarily conversion.